Have you ever wondered how to truly thrive after losing a loved one, especially a spouse? Grief can feel overwhelming, and the road to healing often seems daunting. In today's video, we're exploring 3 crucial secrets that can help you not only cope but flourish in your later years after such a profound loss. We'll dive into real-life experiences and practical advice from those who have navigated this challenging journey. Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you like this video. You can help me continue to spread the old age lesson. If you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like this video, please comment number 1. If you don't like it, comment number 0 to let me know so I can make a better video for you. Now let's get started. Life in this world is inherently unpredictable and often filled with uncertainty. The journey of life is a complex tapestry woven with moments of joy, challenge, and unexpected turns. You can never truly know how long the person you love will remain by your side. Miyazaki Hao once offered a profound analogy, comparing life to a train journey. According to Hao, everyone you meet and love can only accompany you for a segment of the trip. When they must disembark, it is important to be grateful for the time you shared. The true blessing is in having someone who travels with you throughout the entirety of your journey. Finding a partner in youth and maintaining that companionship into old age is a significant blessing, though it is not always a reality. Some loved ones may leave this world prematurely due to illness, accidents, or unforeseen disasters. When a spouse passes away, the home often feels empty, and life may seem to lose its support and foundation. The void left behind can be overwhelming and heart-wrenching. Yet, no matter how deep the sorrow or how intense the pain is, time marches on relentlessly, and the reality is that the deceased will not return. In the face of such profound loss, it becomes crucial to focus on healing and continue living your life with purpose and dignity. 3 seasoned individuals, each with their own experiences and wisdom, offer valuable guidance for those navigating life after the loss of a spouse. They share their stories to advise middle-aged and elderly friends on how to move forward gracefully. To ensure that your later years are lived with comfort and contentment, they emphasize that there are 3 critical things you must avoid doing if your spouse has passed away. By steering clear of these pitfalls, you can cultivate a fulfilling and enjoyable life in your later years. First and foremost, it's crucial to avoid letting yourself be overwhelmed by prolonged grief. When a partner who has been by your side for much of your life departs prematurely, even the presence of children can't fill the void left in your heart. That space was uniquely occupied by your partner, and it's natural to find it difficult to let go. This profound sense of emptiness can make you cling nostalgically to the past, unwilling to move forward. If you learned a lesson from this, please leave a comment of gratitude below the comments section of this video. Take the experience of 67-year-old Misli, who lost her husband when she was 64. She vividly remembers how, in the immediate aftermath of his passing, she struggled immensely with acceptance. During those early days, Misli felt as though she was merely going through the motions of life, trapped in a state of despair where everything seemed devoid of meaning. There were moments when she even contemplated joining him, overwhelmed by the intensity of her sorrow. Each night, as she lay alone in their once shared bed, the stark reality of her solitude would hit her hard. The bed, once a symbol of their togetherness, now felt like a reminder of her isolation, deepening her sadness. She would often find herself crying herself to sleep, unable to find rest, haunted by the space beside her. However, as she gazed upon their old photographs capturing moments of shared happiness, Misli found herself confronting a difficult realization. Those images, brimming with smiles and joy, began to catalyze for her to reconsider her grief. She recognized that her late husband would not have wanted her to be consumed by sorrow indefinitely. Tears alone, she understood, would not bring him back. Determined to honor his memory, Misli resolved to continue living, even in her sadness. She aimed to find a balance between mourning and moving forward, striving to let her husband's spirit rest peacefully. Through this process, she eventually came to a profound understanding. While the separation caused by death is indeed one of the greatest sorrows in life, the deceased is gone, and those who remain must continue living. Despite the happiness of past days and the sweetness of cherished memories, it is essential to avoid becoming ensnared by the past. Instead, focusing on the present beauty and future possibilities is not just a personal duty, but also a way to allow a deceased loved one to rest in peace. Embracing the present and looking forward to the future is a testament to the life and love shared, as well as a way to honor the legacy of those who have passed. When your spouse is gone, it's essential to first maintain a sense of calm. Start by comforting yourself and taking good care of your health. It's important to keep a clear mind and not let grief completely overwhelm you. Take the time to adjust your mindset gradually. Regain your confidence and strive to live a life of self-sufficiency and strength. Embrace the journey of moving forward by focusing on self-care. Allow yourself to cheer up, eat when you feel hungry, and sleep when you can. Enjoy simple pleasures like strolling through the park or walking around the streets. It's vital to avoid leaning too heavily on others for support. Instead, learn to find solace in solitude with grace and wisdom, nurturing your inner world. Just as you might savor a fine, aged wine, take time to appreciate and reflect on your life, even in moments of loneliness. Stay connected with friends, engage in meaningful conversations, and find joy in your own company. By cultivating a sense of contentment and fulfillment in your solitary moments, you can make your later years enjoyable and fulfilling, despite the absence of your spouse. Second, it's important to avoid placing an excessive burden on your children for the rest of your life. As you age and your spouse is no longer with you, your children become the closest family members you have. Many elderly individuals contemplate living with one of their children, believing this arrangement would provide the best support and comfort in their later years. However, it's crucial to recognize that contemporary young people often prefer to maintain their independent households and may be reluctant to live with their elderly parents. This reluctance is not merely about differing living habits, it also encompasses variations in consumption preferences and child-rearing philosophies. Some elderly individuals grappling with the loss of a spouse might expect their children to be present around the clock or to take them in temporarily, viewing this as an obligation of filial piety. Yet, it's important to remember that younger generations have their own families and face their own set of pressures and responsibilities that may not be immediately apparent to us. When children are expected to prioritize their parents' needs over their own, they may struggle to balance their aspirations and obligations. This can lead to stress and strain on their own lives, which may inadvertently affect their well-being and the quality of their relationships. Thus, while it is natural to seek support from loved ones, it is also vital to foster a sense of independence and self-reliance. By doing so, you can help ensure that both you and your children maintain a healthy and balanced relationship, allowing everyone to thrive despite the challenges that come with aging and loss. 65-year-old Mrs. Howe shared her experience of life after her spouse's passing, reflecting on the complexities of living arrangements with family. After her husband died, she initially moved in with her daughter, expecting this arrangement to be a natural extension of the mutual support she had always envisioned between parents and children. Having devoted herself to raising her daughter and supporting her family, Mrs. Howe felt that it was only fitting for her daughter to provide her with companionship and support in her later years. However, this expectation did not fully align with reality. Over time, Mrs. Howe noticed a growing sense of distance and dissatisfaction from her daughter and son-in-law. Despite their initial willingness to accommodate her, the dynamic began to shift. The transition was particularly challenging for Mrs. Howe, as she had never imagined living alone again. She had envisioned a future where she and her husband would age together, sharing the responsibilities and joys of their twilight years. Instead, a sudden illness claimed her husband, leaving her to navigate life on her own. When her daughter, now a mother herself, suggested that Mrs. Howe move in with them and retire, she was initially grateful for their support. The arrival of her grandson brought her some solace, and she found joy in helping with household chores and caring for the baby. To Mrs. Howe, her grandson symbolized a kind of rebirth, a comforting reminder of her late husband. She poured her time and energy into nurturing her grandson, seeing this role as a meaningful way to stay connected to her family's life. Despite these efforts, Mrs. Howe's experience highlights the delicate balance between dependence and independence in familial relationships. Her story underscores the importance of navigating these dynamics with sensitivity and understanding, acknowledging that while familial support is invaluable, it also requires careful consideration of everyone's needs and expectations. Initially, her daughter and son-in-law provided her with financial support each month to cover her living expenses. However, over time, this support ceased when she started receiving her pension. As her grandson grew, her pension proved inadequate to support the needs of the family of 4. Despite her repeated requests for additional assistance, her daughter's responses were often marked by impatience. She would occasionally send some money, but frequently seemed to forget or neglect her mother's needs. If you learned a lesson from this, please leave a comment of gratitude below the comments section of this video. Living together naturally led to frequent disagreements, exacerbated by the generational gap and differing perspectives. The elderly woman often voiced her concerns about her daughter's financial management and her grandson's education. She believed that children needed strict discipline from an early age, while her daughter and son-in-law preferred a more laissez-faire approach. These differing views gradually created a rift in their relationship. The daughter and son-in-law began to address her with less politeness and respect, reflecting a growing distance. Eventually, the elderly woman decided to move out and live alone again. When she expressed her desire to return to her own home, her daughter responded with a mix of relief and sadness. It was clear that, while they would miss her, they were also relieved to have one less responsibility. The support they needed when her grandson was younger was no longer as crucial, and they had managed to adapt to their new routine without her. Returning to her own home, she initially faced feelings of loneliness and a sense of purposelessness. The simplicity of her life made her feel isolated, and she struggled with a lack of emotional support. However, she soon began to adapt and embrace her solitude. She rediscovered old hobbies, joined calligraphy and painting classes, and became involved in community groups where she made a few like-minded friends. Her days gradually became more fulfilling. Through this period of adjustment, she came to realize that the ideal retirement life she had always yearned for was within her grasp. She found contentment in the freedom and leisure she had longed for since her husband's passing. Her solitary life, once seen as a challenge, now became a source of personal satisfaction and a reflection of her deepest desires for independence and self-fulfillment. Third, it's important to approach the idea of finding a new partner or remarrying with caution. The notion that second marriages are often fraught with risk carries some truth, though it's not a universal reality. Elderly individuals entering into new relationships face unique challenges due to deeply ingrained habits and viewpoints formed over decades. Each person comes with their own set of expectations and personal inclinations, which can make it difficult to establish a harmonious and sincere partnership later in life. When one spouse has passed away, feelings of loneliness and apprehension about the future can be overwhelming. It's natural to seek a companion for mutual support and shared experiences. However, elderly remarriages come with their own set of complexities and potential pitfalls. Finding a truly considerate and compatible partner can be challenging, and making a hasty or ill-considered choice could lead to significant difficulties in the years that remain. Take, for instance, the experience of 62-year-old Mrs. Fong. After the death of her first husband when she was 53, she remarried 3 years later, only to find that her second marriage ended in divorce within a year. Reflecting on her second marriage still evokes pain and frustration for her. She shares her story as a cautionary tale for others who may be contemplating remarriage later in life. Mrs. Fong had hoped to enjoy her retirement by traveling with her husband, making up for lost time. Tragically, her husband passed away from illness before he could retire, leaving her to cope with profound grief. During this period of mourning, her son suggested that she move in with him, concerned about her well-being. Although appreciative of his concern, Mrs. Fong was reluctant to impose on him and his family, given their busy lives. Her son then proposed enrolling her in a senior travel group to help lift her spirits. Preferring not to burden him further, Mrs. Fong decided to join a dance and poetry recitation class on her own. It was in this class that she met her second husband, Mr. Lu. Initially, they were merely acquaintances, and it was only later that their relationship developed into something more. Mrs. Fong's experience underscores the importance of carefully considering the decision to remarry. While the desire for companionship is understandable, it is crucial to be mindful of the complexities involved in establishing a new relationship later in life. Taking the time to reflect on one's needs and the potential challenges can help avoid making hasty decisions that might complicate the remaining years. One day, Mrs. Fong sprained her ankle while going down the stairs. Mr. Lu immediately stepped in to help her, taking her to the hospital and then caring for her at home during her recovery. Although she couldn't attend her dance and poetry recitation class, Mr. Lu made daily visits to provide support. Through this experience, their bond deepened and they grew closer. 2 months later, Mr. Lu proposed to Mrs. Fong, expressing his affection and desire to live together for mutual support. Mrs. Fong was pleased by the proposal but chose not to make an immediate decision. She wanted to discuss it with her son first. Her son did not oppose the idea, but recommended meeting Mr. Lu's family to get to know them better. Mr. Lu readily agreed, and both families had dinner together that evening. After the meeting, her son advised her to observe more and not rush into the marriage, but Mrs. Fong, believing Mr. Lu to be a suitable partner, did not heed his advice. A few days later, they registered their marriage, and she moved into Mr. Lu's home. If you learned a lesson from this, please leave a comment of gratitude below the comments section of this video. Initially, their life together was harmonious, even though Mrs. Fong took on all the household chores without complaint, having managed them before. However, tensions began to surface when her old friends invited her to travel. Mrs. Fong agreed to the trip without hesitation, but Mr. Lu reacted negatively, expressing frustration that no one would be available to handle the housework in her absence. This reaction felt unfair to Mrs. Fong. She questioned whether she was merely hired to help. The disagreement escalated into a fierce argument, during which Mr. Lu made hurtful comments, suggesting that she was only valuable in the context of housework. This conflict marked the first time Mrs. Fong seriously questioned the viability of the marriage. Upon her return from the trip, things deteriorated further. Mr. Lu's son had recently divorced, leaving behind a grandson who came to live with them. Initially, Mrs. Fong took on the responsibility of caring for the child as if he were her own. However, the child proved to be challenging, spoiled, picky with food, and prone to tantrums. After struggling to manage the situation, Mrs. Fong spoke to Mr. Lu, suggesting that his son should take responsibility for his child. Mr. Lu responded vehemently, saying, "You're not my grandson's mother, so don't interfere. If you can't handle it, stay out of it." This response left Mrs. Fong feeling deeply wronged and disillusioned. She began to understand the complexities of remarriage at her age and the difficulties in gaining acceptance from a new partner's family. After enduring months of escalating problems, Mrs. Fong decided to file for divorce. The process was relatively smooth, but the experience left her reflecting on her situation. Although living alone might be lonely, she concluded that it was preferable to the difficulties she faced in her remarriage. Through this painful journey, Mrs. Fong learned that while companionship is valuable, the challenges of blending lives and families later in life can be significant. Thank you for watching. We've explored valuable insights and real-life stories about thriving after losing a loved one, focusing on how to manage grief, avoid overdependence on children, and the pitfalls of rash remarriage. What have you learned from this video? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments below one thing you've learned and how you plan to bring it into your life. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue to provide valuable content and encouragement. Until next time, take care and embrace the journey of life with hope and resilience.